And welcome to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett, and he is Mark Messina. I made you watch the Biden speech, Saving Democracy. We're going to talk about that. We're going to have a very political show today, but it's going to be cordial. It's going to be amicable. But there's some things I want to discuss with you about the speech. You brought up an interesting thing about Trump's taxes as well. I just got a Kyrie update that I found fascinating. You may have a Philly update for us because I'm ignoring the World Series. Mark, how are you feeling today?
Look, when I do this, it looks like I have a gap in my hair. Look at it.
I will defend you. Lighting has never been a strong suit for our...
It's Cave Dweller Day here on the Midday Show.
For the Midday Show, lighting has never been our strong suit. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for watching the Midday Show presented by Weis Markets.
Were you a kid that your mom would be like, Jeff, turn a light on. You can't see.
All the time.
Did you read in the dark?
Yes.
Well, not like dark, but...
Yeah, no.
So you prefer a dark room?
I just think it's easier on the eyes. Like it's just easier to focus too.
It's easier to fall asleep. Is what it's easier to do.
I've told you before. I just literally bright rooms have been used as a form of torture. like literally.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yes, and dark rooms have been used as a what word did you say before?
A form of torture.
A form. Yes, as a form of slumber. That's what dark rooms are used
I understand.
for.
Well, I would take slumber over torture any day of the week.
Valid point. I'll give you that.
Any day of the week.
I'll give you that.
Here's what I want to do with you today. And I made you listen to...
Incidentally, before we talk about this, we're a little late today because my camera wouldn't turn on.
No.
And we went through all the settings. You went out. Like with all the technological geniuses here, the recommendation is turn it off and turn it back on. And I did. I closed it out. I opened it up. There we go.
Yeah.
That is one of the beautiful things about technology.
It's one of the beautiful things about life is sometimes if you just take a moment, it'll solve itself. You just got to take a step back for a moment. No?
Just think of like everywhere else in the world where, oh, the refrigerator's broken. We'll just shut the door and open it again, and now it'll be cold. Nowhere else in basic society does this work.
Only here. Well, maybe if you unplug the fridge and then plug it back in.
Rarely.
Maybe. I get what your point is, though. It wouldn't just
It happens more in the most advanced realms of computer than anywhere else. We'll just turn it off, turn it back on.
Yeah, just give it a second.
Okay. Like that.
It's like when you need a nap. Like just, like all of a sudden you take a nap and you wake up and everything's better.
It's the version, it's computer's version of a power nap.
Yes, that's all it is.
Okay. I can work with that.
You and I, we're going to have some fun today, but we are going to talk politics for a little bit. Biden gave a speech.
You're saying politics can't be fun?
I think politics can be really fun.
I agree.
Listen, there's maybe a handful of people I would do this with, and you are one of them, because I think we can have the conversation without it just becoming an absolute
Yes,
disaster.
I agree with that too.
Biden gave a speech. The quote of the speech was democracy on the ballot. I have here kind of like three different touch points as I was listening to it, and I was kind of thinking about it. There are a lot of things. I will say this. Personally, I didn't love the speech. I think there's a couple of questions that I'm curious because I have not talked to you about this yet. I only asked you to watch.
You made me watch.
So I'm curious to hear some of your opinion on this stuff. I will open up with this. Do you think it was a good move, a way to try to I don't want to say unite the country, but I felt like I don't want to say he felt obligated to give the speech or obligated to talk about saving democracy because if it's important and he wants to talk about it, he should. I just don't know if he truly believes that the point he was trying to make wasn't going to rub other people the wrong way, or are we just at a point in society where if you're him, you're going to rub half the people the wrong way anyway, so it doesn't matter, and I'm going to talk about this.
And it's an interesting conundrum you bring up because I was thinking the same thing. Is there an aspect where his handlers, if you will, those closest to him, say, you're the president and you're going to piss people off and you need to say what needs to be said? Or, because I would take the other approach that no matter how brilliant of a speech you give or terrible of a speech you give, if enough people aren't listening, it doesn't matter.
Sure.
So no matter what you're doing, whether you're when you're explaining anything to anyone, how you deliver it is vital, because you can't give it the same lesson to a junior in high school as you do to a second grader, because they won't get it. And I appreciate what he was trying to do, and I don't think it was a terrible speech.
The speech itself wasn't bad.
No, I think there are parts of it that he could have done better.
I think there's parts of the speech, and these are the things I want to talk to you about. And obviously, we're a little bit on different sides of the aisle, but we tend to be more towards the middle than not. But there were some things in the speech that I'm kind of listening to, and I'm like, I don't know if he's swinging and missing. I don't even know if he knows what he's actually swinging for. So I will start here. The whole point of the speech is democracy on the ballot. And trust me, I very much love democracy, and I think it's very important. To sell it as if this is like we're saving democracy, these are some of the quotes that he used. He brought up the whole mantra of freedom isn't free, and near the beginning of it. He talks about how your vote is your choice. At one point, he says you can't love your country only when you win. But as he's saying all these things, to me, it very much sounds like he's saying, so you have to vote for us.
Well, see,
I'm listening to it, and the funny part is, like, in the dumbest context possible, everything he's saying are things as an American. I'm like, yes, like I totally, yes, like democracy should be defended, like all these things. But also, like, there's this inkling of everything he's saying. You can hear it in his voice. It's like, it's your choice, your vote, but you better vote for us. And freedom isn't free, and your vote is yours. But if you believe in that, you need to vote for us.
See, I didn't take it that way.
Okay.
But I was waiting for him to say, if you are, obviously Biden's a Democrat. Yeah. If you are Republican, we still want you to vote. Like, that is what this is about. And to his
credit, he said, like, a couple of times he said, like, everyone should vote.
Yes.
Everyone has a vote. Like, so
yes.
he did hint at that. My problem was not so much, it was like how he would end up there. And then when he would end it, it was kind of like, this is really important. Like, we're saving democracy. And so your vote better include that. And if you're going to include that in your vote, the right vote is us. And that was basically the gist of a lot of it.
Do you remember, you're younger, I don't know if you remember this, when Bush Jr., when W, in one of his, it must have been a last debate, and I think it was his first term. I'm not sure if it was his second term, but he said, if you're voting for my opponent, please vote just once. And it was really funny.
Sure.
And the debates are not usually funny. But he just kind of, we want you to get out and vote. And if you're voting for my opponent, please vote just once. Yeah. And I was waiting, if I could sit down with Biden and give him speech advice talk, that the message should have been, we need both sides. We can't have, if we are extreme one side, then the people who are extreme the other side, no matter which way it is, are miserable living in an America that they don't believe in. So we have to, the whole world of democracy is about compromise. That we can't have everything that our side believes, or the other side is going to have nothing they believe, and that's not really fair. Right. Especially when we're as 50-50 divided as we are. And I wish that he would have said more along the lines of, we want everybody to go vote, and at the end of the day, you should be able to shake hands and hug and have conversations with people on the other side of the aisle, because as Americans, the better we work together, the better it's going to be. And I wish he would have come out and said, the extreme left, we don't want, if the extreme left wins, even though that's his party, the extreme right I don't want to say feels left out, they are left out. And everybody should have a voice in politics, and it should work to everyone, at least to a degree. And so I also, it's really hard, it must be, especially as the president of the United States, because you're the leader of the free world and all that good stuff, to make a speech knowing, how do you make a speech that you connect to an entire group when 50% of the people somewhere between hate you or at least dislike you.
Sure.
And you, if you don't go in understanding that, then you're never going to reach these people.
I totally agree with you. So I guess my question,
And that's what I think. Not just,
No,
I don't think he reached anyone on the right.
so yeah, and so I guess that was going to be my question to you, is kind of knowing that and listening to that. I feel like he didn't play to the right at all. I feel like he actually made the right feel as if their vote for democracy, like, not that it doesn't count, but that if you don't vote Democratic, there's this idea then that you decided democracy was not important on your ballot. And I wonder.
I'm going to watch it again because I didn't get that.
I wonder how many Republicans will feel that way after listening to that speech.
That's a good question. See, I would think if I'm Biden, which clearly I'm not. I don't know. Were you aware of that?
That you what?
I'm not the president.
No,
but
yes,
if I were,
do know now.
If I were, I would have thought that his goal should have been to motivate everyone to vote.
And I think he
and
tried.
as for all Republicans that watched that, they should have left thinking, I'm still voting Republican, but I'm going to go vote for the sake of democracy. And there is the point that he talked about. Democracy doesn't only work when your side wins.
Yes,
and
you
that
can't only love your country when your side
yes,
wins.
and that is a very important, because through everyone's lifetime, the House, the Senate, the White House is going to be your party, the other party, your party, the other party. That's how history goes.
Yes,
and we all have to be able to. I don't say we have to because we don't, but it would be better if we were amicable and work together and discuss things. And
yes.
so,
as someone who doesn't I don't love Joe Biden. However, I do
not many people that love Joe Biden.
However, I do sympathize with trying to give that speech. I agree with you full-heartedly that it's not an easy thing to do. I just listen. Some of the quotes are just so corny is the wrong word, because I don't think being patriotic is corny, right? I don't think
Correct.
believing in democracy is corny. However, the one-liners of freedom isn't free and you can't love your country only when you win and all that stuff. And all I kept thinking when I was listening to it is kind of so you better vote for democracy, and to vote for democracy, you better vote for us. And the whole time I was listening to it, I was kind of I'm really curious what the majority of Republicans felt. If you could remove just the vial of the fact that he's a Democrat, I would be very curious to see what Republicans thought of having to listen, not having to, because no one has to listen,
right?
But listening to a speech in which the president is basically saying democracy is on the ballot, and so you better think about who you're voting for, when it's very clearly he is hinting at the idea that if you're going to vote for democracy, you need to vote for us. That is what I heard.
See, no, I've always said this, and I'm all right. I'm babbling here, so I'm thinking out loud. When I criticized him before, him being Biden, when they did the COVID announcement, public service announcement during the Super Bowl, and it was Biden and his wife, and I said, I get you're the president, I get that she's the first lady. If you want to reach the masses, it needs to be Biden with a high-ranking Republican, whether it was Mitch McConnell,
right?
Whether it was, obviously Trump wouldn't have come. Whether it was George W. Somebody. So
somebody with a red tie and an elephant.
Yes. If giving this speech, because this wasn't a State of the Union. This was just a get out and vote, right?
Sure.
What if he does it? I was going to say with DeSantis. Now, I'm sure people would read into it that he's trying to get DeSantis to anybody. Bring W back. Bring anybody. Bring Condoleezza Rice back. Anyone who's
any Republican who was appalled by January 6th, really. You know what I mean? Because there are Republicans out there that. So I don't. Yes, I agree.
Just have two of you there, and just be like, whether you're voting for my side or you're voting for his side or her side or whoever else is, please go vote. This process is what makes America what it is, to be honest with you. And we have to live with the results, And the better we can cordially live with the results, the better America is. And I think, I wonder if his handlers, again, would have seen it as a sign of weakness that he is sharing his pulpit with somebody from the Republican Party, God forbid. The Republican. But if you're trying to reach the masses when the masses are 50-50, it shows it all over. Well, there's pockets of non-50-50, but as a country, we're 50-50. Right. If you want to reach them all, then let somebody talk to them too.
That's how you do it. Two other points here. I'm trying to decide which one works better into what we just talked about. I'll start with this one. Everything that he talked about with American voters, it's all our responsibility. And he kept hinting at that throughout the speech. So like some of the phrases he used, you're supposed to honor the vote. You're supposed to protect the vote. You're supposed to honor democracy. You're supposed to continue democracy. You're supposed to condemn voter intimidation. Again, like on face value, those are all things I think a lot of us would agree with. Like a lot of us in the 60, 70% towards the middle completely agree with everything that he just said.
Right.
I don't know if it's because I think this is both a Democratic and a Republican thing, especially the politicians that are in office. And so what I wrote here is there's so much that is wrong with our system. And yet he just talked about how voters are responsible for it. Not that there's a problem with the system or with the politicians that are inside of it. And so this whole time there was like a 5-minute moment of the speech where I'm listening and I'm like, boy, he's really putting a lot of responsibility on us. But at the same time, I watch what politicians do every day and I watch how the system failed us. And I, like the last 2 elections, I feel like I haven't had anybody to vote for. But yet, like the responsibility is falling on me to defend democracy.
Well, yeah, but the responsibility of democracy is, of the people and by the people.
It's mine, but see, that's the responsibility of me is to vote. That's
I get what
my
you're saying.
responsibility.
I do get what you're saying, and I think just because the timing of it, he's like, this is the time for you to do your job.
To put democracy, right? To put the balance of democracy onto the voters and not within the system or the politicians themselves. Like to basically just say like, hey, democracy's on the ballot. You guys are going to decide if we save it or not. As if the system or the politicians within it have no actual say to how we've gotten here or why.
Oh, no, I agree.
I completely, I just felt like that was not a great part of the speech.
There's an arrogance to,
and by the way, just to finish that up, I'm not implying that Biden would be the only one to imply that or say that. I mean, there are a lot of politicians on both sides of the aisle that would have the audacity to imply that voters must defend democracy because the system and politicians have no ability to do so.
Well, I think there's an arrogance and to steal your word, audacity from most elected officials that are like, I am who the people wanted. That's why I won. When there's lots of people that go into to cast a ballot that don't really like either of them, and I got to pick one.
Right.
So usually the guy who won because of what party he's with, he or she is with geographically, and who raised more money.
Sure.
But there's lots of people in politics who are like, the people voted for me. The people didn't have anyone else to vote for.
Correct.
So yes,
so I didn't love that aspect of it. I also didn't love, and I understand why he did it. I didn't love him using the Pelosi example personally. I struggled with it because I think there's 2 conversations. I think one conversation is nobody in America should have to feel like someone can barge into your house and beat the crap out of you. Right? Like I think that's a fair way to say. And I wish that on nobody, and even the Pelosi's.
Right.
Putting that over there now. There's also this idea that the Pelosi thing just happened because of voters, right? Like the Pelosi thing happened because of democracy. And it has nothing to do with what the Pelosi's have done year after year after year and people seeing them take advantage of their political position.
Well, no, his stance was that the anger-filled rhetoric right now is what's driving people to this.
But he's using it as a way to help buff up his idea of like democracy is on the ballot. Like politicians are getting beaten up in their own home. Now I'm going to talk to you about democracy being on the ballot and how important it is. But I think a lot of people, whether they're Democratic or Republican, again, no one wants to see a politician beat up.
I disagree with that.
But the reason that they want to see politicians beat up are because they feel like politicians aren't being fair. They feel like politicians. So this is the funny part. By using the Pelosi part at the beginning, I felt very double standard. I felt like here he is, and he's going to talk about how he's going to stand up for the Pelosi's, and rightfully so, and no American should be beat up in their own house. But at the same time, the Pelosi's are not holding up their end of the bargain. They are certainly financially benefiting from her position. They use it to their advantage. And I don't know how else politicians are supposed to be held accountable. I don't think politicians should get the crap beat out of them. But we've noticed fact checking isn't work. Clearly, the exposure of social media isn't making them accountable at all. We're not allowed to put term limits on them. They're allowed to. We've done nothing to keep corporation money, right? They go and they fundraise, they make all this money. So how do you keep them accountable? And it is kind of like the schoolyard, kind of how do you keep a bully accountable?
No,
you go and you punch them.
I never thought of it that way, but that's a valid.
And so again, I just didn't love the Pelosi. I didn't like him trying to put the Pelosi thing at the front of it. And now I'm going to talk about democracy. I thought it was a horrible anecdote to use to try to, because that's kind of people's frustrations, right? Not that they want to see politicians hurt. It's that there are people in this country that feel like there is no other way to keep them accountable.
Well, that's what you're saying, that yes, we as a society, we should be better than we're angry with the politicians, so we go beat up their family. But you're right. It is clear that politicians spend their career doing whatever they can to get reelected and line their pockets. So what's your option in a system they control the system, so they can allow it to continue?
Yes, what's funny is he's asking me to vote to save democracy, but my vote is not going to change term limits. My vote is not going to stop corporations from donating the money. My vote is not going to make fact checking more secure or better. None of my votes are going to solve those things.
Right.
And so again, I'm not telling people to go beat up politicians you don't like. What I'm saying though is there seems to be a gap in the understanding of a politician like Biden that anecdote is not good for describing to save democracy. That anecdote shows the problem we have right now within our democracy.
I agree.
Thank you.
I'm with you.
I'm really, really frustrated. Here's my last part, and then I'll shut up. And this is where we can get into kind of Democrat versus Republican.
Did I ever tell you this before we go further? One of my ideas is to have guys run. I say guys, two people run for an office where the president is one party and the vice president is another party. And part of their campaign is we're going to flip flop after
it's done.
If you win and I'm your vice president, you're going to run for 4 years, and then in 4 years we're going to flip flop and we're going to do it the other way.
So your VP you can't run for president after 4 year VP does, but you're still on. We're going
to show America
that
as a team that we're going to make this our 8 years.
Yes.
Well, and we could actually do 16, but.
Yeah. Well,
maybe you can't.
Well, Thomas Jefferson kind of screwed all that up.
Right.
Because I'm not terribly opposed to the loser being the vice president.
Well, now, it could be worse.
And we did away with that a long, long time ago. But now when
the only reason Jefferson did away with that is because of Hamilton.
No, I knew before Hamilton, but
Hamilton
helped. Here's my last part. And I understand politically what's happening, right? Midterms are coming up, and it's kind of like the final push. And listen, who am I to say a Republican in the same position would not have campaigned their thing that they believe voters should go to the poll for, right? I have no doubt if a Republican was an officer now, he would have stood up and said, the economy is the number one thing right now.
No,
we need to go. So I'm not knocking Biden or the Democratic Party for coming out at the podium and using the leverage that has been afforded them by winning an election.
And he wasn't terrible.
No.
He did not give a terrible speech.
No.
Just could have been a little better.
Here's my thing though. And I think and I'm going to pick on both sides a little bit. I feel right now, and I was trying to think how I wanted to word this, and this is what I came up with. Right now, everything is the end for the Democrats. Everything is the end. And for Republicans, everything is the beginning of the end. And so some of the examples, so for Democrats right now, we have to save democracy. Like that was the whole, we just had a presidential address because we have to save democracy, right? One of the biggest things right now is like, we have to save human rights. Like it's the end of human rights. Al Gore almost won an election, right? Because we had to save the planet. Obama won an election because like, we're going to save the country. We're going to save minorities. We're going to save immigrants. Okay. So like Democrats, it's very much like we have to save because everything around us is crumbling. We have to save it. Republicans, it's like, it's the beginning of the end. So like you look at what's being introduced to our schools and it's like, we have to stop this. Like it's starting, like this is the beginning of it. Like we have to stop. And it's like, people don't want to work anymore. Like, can you believe now people don't want to, like, as if people always wanted to work, right? Like it's, so there is this very funny thing. Democrats want to save it. I, as a Republican, struggle because to me, Democrats, it always feels a little bit like crying, like the wolf, like the boy who cried wolf, where like a lot of the issues that they raise, I care about them, right? Like, I think the planet's important. I think human rights are important. I think democracy is important. But it's always that we have to save it. It's always that this is the end, and if we don't do something about it now. And so, for example, like I've said to you before, it's not that I don't think climate change is real. The problem is I've been hearing about it for 40 years. And so eventually, like, it just gets to a point where I'm like, probably, but at the same time, like, no one's really doing anything about it, and we're all still here.
Well, I love.
So go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I love the rhetoric that, like, if the other side wins, we're all doomed.
Yes.
Like they're here to ruin the country. If the other side wins in 2 years, it's gonna be Armageddon,
Right.
and we are post-apocalyptic Will Smith walking
I've
around.
never felt that way, regardless of which side won the election.
And that's what I've said to people, like, it will still be here 4 years from now. There'll be another one.
Yes.
Like, I don't know what's going to happen in between hither and yon, but it's going
Right.
to be here. And it's.
Well, you wanted to talk about Trump a little bit, which this might be a good segue. I remember, like, when Trump went into office, one of the biggest things was like, oh my gosh, like the country's in jeopardy. And a lot of it was about like foreign relationships and like dealing with dictators and all this stuff. And now, like, the irony of where we sit now, like on a global viewpoint, and how much closer we are to now. Some of that is beyond the party's control, right? Like some of that Democratic Party can't control, some of the Republican Party can't control. But to your point of like just doomsday, and I just remember like Trump, and it was like, oh my gosh, like this is going to be a disaster for foreign affairs. Like this is like, we're going to be at war and all this stuff. And then like it kind of came and went. And now it's 2022, and you look around, and it's kind of like I feel a lot closer now than I did then. And it's so, yes, I agree with you. Like this doomsday idea, and just like we have to save it. I can't relate to it.
And it's a little teenage girlish. Well, doesn't it sound like it?
What's funny? Yes. What's funny is they water it down to the point where someone like me, who could actually agree, like who would actually kind of be like, yeah, I think it's important too. But you like, they just keep kind of hammering it to the point where I'm kind of like, I just think you're overblowing it now.
No,
like,
I agree.
It's over the top.
I listen to these 30-second campaign ads, and it's like the world's coming. It sounds like the teenager that's yelling at their parents saying, you're ruining my life. And like, dude, you're 14. All right. I'm not ruining anything.
It can't be that bad. And that's to tie it back to the address. I mean, if I had a counter for how many times, like, we are saving democracy, democracy is on the ballot, we're saving democracy. After 20 minutes, I'm kind of like, I don't know if we're really saving democracy. Like, I think it's important. I'm sure, like, clearly there's some candidates are better than other candidates. But I don't know. It just gets very difficult to hear somebody kind of keep saying it's going to end.
I'm with you.
So there you go. So that was good. With that being said, because I just kind of went through it all, I actually thought it was one of Biden's better speeches.
It was.
I actually thought it was one of his better ones. The timing and just kind of the underlines of it, I just wonder how a Republican would respond, because I didn't respond the way he probably wanted me to respond to it.
I don't understand how he could have thought that the right would be like, yeah, you know what, he's got it.
Which is why I kind of said, I wonder if his camp is just kind of like, listen, like it doesn't matter, because you could walk up there and sing the Star Spangled Banner, and it's not going to be the right song. It's not going to be in the right key. It's not. So I
disagree with that. I think he should have. I think he should have been more neutral about just America and go vote regardless of what side you're on.
Yeah.
So anyway, are we going to Trump?
We can go to Trump. Yeah.
All right. Did you have an ad you want to throw
I'll
over?
read the headline here from the AP News just to catch, because I'm sure everyone's seen this already. Roberts delays handover of Trump tax returns to House panel. The gist of this is that Chief Justice John Roberts on Tuesday put a temporary hold on the handover of former President Donald Trump's tax returns to a congressional committee. Roberts' order gives the Supreme Court time to weigh the legal issues in Trump's emergency appeal to the High Court filed Monday. What makes this tricky, the 5-second spin on it, is basically what could happen is if it gets pushed off until January, Republicans could now be in charge of the House or Senate, and now all of a sudden they could take away the request for it, and now it goes away. So that's kind of like the behind the scenes of why this is kind of why people are up in arms.
And I didn't even know that
Yes.
until you pointed it out. So when it first came up and I saw Supreme Court blocks, that was the word, blocks.
Yes.
And I was like, I don't know what this is about. So I started reading. And didn't they block it till Thursday?
Yes.
Like, so they blocked it. They delayed it for the
Correct.
purpose of allowing the attorneys to present arguments. Now, I don't know why the attorneys weren't ready to present arguments on Monday.
Right.
But this was more, this is kind of an attack on the media and kind of what we do.
Sure.
Of like, the Supreme Court blocked it.
Right.
Like, no, they didn't. They pushed it back 2 days.
Right.
So it's just another exemplification for me of how we have to put in a little more effort to we are at a point in society where we just can't read the headline and know what the hell they're saying. And because immediately, like, the Supreme Court is supposed to be non-political. They're supposed to be non-biased. I know they're 6'3" and they have voting tendencies and stuff, but they're supposed to be run by school or governed by the rule of law.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden, like, well, why are they saying that this? Why did they block it? They didn't block it. They pushed it back 3 days to allow the attorneys to. And I'm just like, it's so misleading.
Can I do this real quick, because that goes along with your point, and I'm bringing it back to Biden, because did you get to see the headlines about his address? So here's what's funny. Clearly, I wasn't a huge fan of the address. However, as I was reading through the headlines, I was like, this is absolute. I'm going to swear. This is absolute bullshit, because I was like, depending on which headline you get, really. So
it was either the Gettysburg Address or it was Roseanne singing the national anthem.
So here's the examples that I have up on Google News. So CNN, Biden's plea for democracy is a strong election closing argument for a different election. So that was CNN's title. New York Times, in speech, Biden warns that America's democracy is in peril. Okay. One of the headlines for CNBC, Biden blames extreme MAGA Republicans for intimidating voters and election officials, calling it corrosive to democracy.
Okay.
That was their headline for the speech. I want to try to find the Fox one. Here was the Fox one. Biden ridiculed for despicable speech on threat to democracy. This is what delusion looks like. So I just read you 5 different headlines. Honest to God, 3 of them could be different stories.
Right. It's all the same speech.
You wouldn't even know. Forget speech. You wouldn't even know it was the same country. Like, you wouldn't. It's so, yes, to your point, yes, 1,000 times. It's just becoming really, really difficult, to the point where now you're asking people to double educate themselves, right? It's not enough to ask people to educate themselves on the issues. You're now asking them to educate themselves on media and who leans where and whose agenda is what. And here's the funny thing, like, I think it's really hard for Americans now to find context and it's easy to find information. It's really hard to find context. And now you're asking them to double dip. It's not enough to have context on the story. You now need to have context on the media who's covering it. And it's just, at some point, as an American, like, you can't blame Americans for giving up or for
there's too much noise
like it's
now.
hopeless.
There's too much noise.
Really, really difficult.
This is where my mind went. While you were trying to be serious, I'm picturing the room at Fox and the room at, like, MSNBC, where somebody in the Fox room is like, that wasn't a terrible speech. And they're like, we can't say that.
Sure.
It was ridiculed. And then who ridiculed it? Joe over in the corner, he ridiculed it. So we're going. And then in the CNBC, they're like, I get what he's trying to do, but I can see how he missed the mark. Yeah. They're like, we can't say that. This was the greatest speech since Lou Gehrig was dying.
Sure.
Like, so it would be so interesting to hear what any of these people, whether it's the politicians or whether it's like, how many times does a politician read a speech and walk off and go, I don't believe half of that. That was crap. Who wrote that? That sucked.
I would love to ask somebody who's been in who's really been in it for like
in the room where it happened,
kind of like for 15, 20 years.
You like that, didn't you?
I did.
You like that.
Like for 15, like someone who's really been through it. And I would love to ask them, like, listen, when you like, how many speeches do you give in a year? And then just say to them, like, you can't possibly read every one before you read it.
Right.
I just to kind of see like if they would crack or if they would give in, because don't get me wrong, the big ones I'm sure, right? But I mean, like every speech.
Oh, how many times is he getting out of a car and he's buttoning up his jacket and they're handing him like, here's your speech. Thank you. No, I'm with you. I am with you.
I would just be curious to see if they're cracking.
And listen, you know it too because parents do it, teachers do it, coaches do it.
Yes.
You give that speech and you're like, yeah, you keep working hard. Next year you can be in the starting lineup. You're like, this kid's not even making the team. Like, of course, people do it all the time.
It happens. The last one I wanted to read to you. This was from the Star Telegram. Desperate Biden tried to link all Republicans to MAGA extremism. Was the title from?
See, now that's clearly not true because he kept saying the MAGAs are the minority of the party. He said it twice.
Yes. No, and that's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
It's really, really difficult.
But again, and I've said this too, it's just like watching sports in a bar. Nobody gets up on their bar stool with their team's jersey on and says, our quarterback is mediocre. Like, our coach is pretty decent.
Right.
Like, it's boring.
Right.
No, and it doesn't sell papers and it doesn't get clicks.
I'm going to give you an afterthought with maybe Philly or Kyrie, but real quick before we do that, Horizon Federal Credit Union, thank you for sponsoring NorthcentralPa.com. For those who don't know, Horizon for low-rate credit cards, your choice for this year's holiday purchase. Be sure to check out Horizon Federal Credit Union. See Beyond today. And then we also want to shout out Palco Federal Credit Union. Falco Credit Card, you can now download their mobile app today. Life is unpredictable and time is always short, but that shouldn't stop you from banking when it's convenient for you with the mobile banking Palco app. View account balances, make transfers, view transaction details. Download the Palco app today.
One of the things I've learned through real estate is when you're taking loans, not all banks and not all lending institutions are the same, and some work better with VA loans, some work better with construction loans, some work better with first-time home buyers. So it is valuable to check out some of these, and we have some great sponsors, and Horizon Federal and Palco Federal are two great options for you to go check it out because, like I said, they're not all the same. It's not just like a grocery store where you're just buying milk. Some of them, they're mostly the same, but some of them have different little specialties where this place is maybe better than you can get a better rate or you can get a better deal. They're used to doing it more. Yeah. So check them out, shop around.
Can I be a loser for a second? So I think I've told you before, I do a lot of
You're a loser every day.
I know. I do a lot of grocery shopping at Sam's Club, which is a different type of grocery shopping because it's bulk, but there's less choices. Mm-hmm. So I have not been to I just don't go to a grocery store a lot, okay?
Okay.
I go to Sam's Club, I get my gallon of milk, I walk out. I don't even think about the choice of what milk I'm buying. I was at Wegmans. I was blown away at all the different milks, different kinds, different, almond milk, the nut milk. It was all over the place. I did not know this. I did not realize that, the milk genre, the milk options, it's almost like soda now. I mean, you can pick and choose whatever you want. Did you know this?
Well, yeah, because I'm in Weis Markets 4 days a week. We talk about this all the time.
I had no idea. I thought there was 2%, 1%.
Well, there is, and there is.
Okay. And yes, and then
there's
skim.
soy and
no. See,
there's lots.
See, in my world, you're either grabbing the fat free or you're grabbing the 2%, and that's your choice.
Not to me. This will be the most boring conversation we've ever had, but the grocery store evolution. When I grew up, the Weis Markets in Montoursville it has moved. They built a bigger one, but it's now like a doctor's office. But there was no pharmacy, there was no bakery, there was no florist, there was none. You couldn't order food. You could get a frozen pizza, but you couldn't get a real pizza. You couldn't get subs. The the grocery store evolution, and it would be fascinating to me, at least. Probably not how they decide, because they only have so much shelf space.
Sure.
And how they decide what goes where, how different it would be because we live in a rural area, how it is to an urban area, how it is in New York State, how it is, because like Weis Markets is all over, and these ones that are all over the country. It can't be the same. And how do they decide? And I know you have the
milk and bread in the back. I bet you they have all. I bet you all of them have that in common.
But even I mean, it would be, and maybe no one's around because I'm trying to think, when did the Weis Markets move? It's been 40 years, but how much of their business has been increased because they put a pharmacy in?
Sure.
And how much, because how many bakeries, how many small town bakeries, how many small town florists have gone out of business because the grocery store chains now, you can buy everything. You can get your prescriptions, you can get flowers, you can get a birthday cake, plus you can get all your it's just a neat little evolution of America, I guess, over the last however many years.
Yeah.
Because none of them were like that.
Do you remember my first time ever being like at a Sheetz? It's nothing compared to now.
I'm trying to think of my first Sheetz.
Sheetz has drive-throughs now. I don't know if you saw that or not.
They do?
Yeah. So like the ones in State College and some bigger areas, it's like a drive-through fast food. Like you pull up, it's crazy.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So I'm with you. It's really interesting.
Well, now they have gas, and the gas station in Torresville, if it's not done, it's like going to open any day. Gas and go.
Yeah. Do you want to end with Kyrie or Philly?
Yeah, I might actually slap an article together because I'm fascinated by what happened in Philadelphia last night. The Phillies got no hit last night. It's 2-2. I think I said yesterday the series is far from over. The what was the kid's last name? Christian, whatever, was unbelievably good. And now tonight is Syndergaard, who is kind of used to be great and is looking to regain the form against Verlander. This is the best marquee matchup in name-wise. But it's Verlander struggled in the World Series. He struggled this postseason, and Syndergaard's trying to regain his old form, which he may or may not ever do. And Game 5 is going to be fun. It's the last one in Philadelphia.
Yeah. There was a statement. We talked about Kyrie yesterday, so anyone who listened to the show yesterday, they're going to meet with the commissioner. The commissioner has not suspended him yet, but we'll see what comes from the meeting.
And I would say this too. I know under cover of darkness in both Philadelphia and Houston, there is an NFL game tonight between the Eagles and the Texans, which is just fantastic.
Sure.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
And I would not be shocked to see the Eagles give a lackluster performance. They've only had 3 road games. They've won 2 of them by 3. They won in Arizona by 3. They won in Detroit by 3. Arizona's not great. Detroit's not great. I know Houston, the Texans aren't great, but I think the Eagles are like 14 or 15 or 16. Like, don't be surprised if this is an ugly, and we've seen a lot of ugly Thursday night games. Mm-hmm. They're on the road. They have to travel to Texas. Don't be surprised if this is a close, ugly, low scoring, 23-16 game.
Right. No, I'm with you. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news. Thank you to Weis Markets for being the title sponsor. Grocery rewards, gas rewards. Now you can have your Thanksgiving rewards. Be sure to go to Weis Markets for all of your grocery needs.
There you go.
I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina.